Hello, I'm John Wolter, instructor for English 302, Advanced Composition, sections M01 and M03, and this is the second part of a two-part lecture on writing, taking a look at the readings from the Craft of Research for week 5. So, as a reminder, in the first lecture, which is in a separate video, we took a look at the prologue from part 4, also talked about Sandra Pearl's composing guidelines, took a look at the quick tip on outlining and storyboarding, and talked about chapter 12 on planning. In this lecture, we're going to take a look at chapters 13 on drafting. I'm going to talk about Peter Elbow's collage method, and then I'm going to take, which is a method of drafting, generating a bunch of text as a drafting process, and then going to take a look at chapter 14 on revising. Okay, so chapter 13 on drafting. Basically, the reading from chapter 13 can be summed up with one piece of advice. There is no one way to create a draft. Different writers have different strategies, and when your regular strategies don't seem to be working for you, try others. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you look for some smaller tasks to focus on. If you're finding yourself being too much of a perfectionist, you're not getting any drafting done, if you're just trying to get a sentence right, you're trying to kind of get words right, you're spending too much time trying to track down little minor details, try moving on. You can leave yourself a note. Just write some very, very successful academic writers that I know who write a lot and publish a lot. Actually, when they hit moments like that, they actually just type in. They have a convention that they use. They just type in a note. Either use a comment in the function in the Word Microsoft, like a comment function in the word processor, or they put some brackets around, use a different colored font, and just give themselves a brief note about what they need to do, and then they move on. They can come back to it later after they've sort of drafted everything. And so if you're finding yourself getting too stuck on one particular issue, move on to a different section, or just make a note and then you can move on to what you can do from that point. So yes, I'm actually telling you, if you're finding yourself getting stuck somewhere or being a perfectionist, to stop, move on, try different drafting somewhere else. The key to creating a first draft is to create a first draft. No one cares, and no one's going to know if you wrote section 4 before you wrote section 2. The draft is there as a draft. And no one's going to care that when you were drafting, if you left big sections, big kind of holes with notes like talk about X here, look up this, later on. No one's going to know that you actually left those notes for yourself and that you just moved on, leaving those gaps as you wrote. As long as you go back and you take care of all that stuff after you've got you've got the majority of your draft done, so the initial drafting taken care of, no one's going to know. And no one's going to care because what you have is a draft. In her famous book on writing, titled Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott has a chapter titled Shitty First Drafts. It's chapter 4. And it's titled Shitty First Drafts because first drafts are shitty. And here's the thing. The difference between a great first draft that took you 15 hours to write and a shitty first draft that took you 5 hours to write and then another 5 hours to revise, 5 hours of your time that you could be spending doing something else. I do want to note, though, that writing's hard. All of us have struggles with writing at one time or another. All of us kind of get stuck. All of us sort of feel like we're having writer's block. And there are ways around that. Our book offers a few suggestions. If you need some others, ask. What we're going to talk about here in a second, the collage method, is one way of generating a lot of text, and it's based on an idea. It doesn't talk about it here, ideas of free writing. Hopefully you've encountered that before. If you haven't, ask in the discussion forums, and we'll kind of cover that. It's also focus free writing. So focus free writing means that you actually know that a particular topic that you want to you're focusing on a particular area. And there's even loop focus free writing where you actually kind of focus on the issue and you kind of write about it, and then you go back and you maybe write for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Then you stop, you actually read what you just wrote, and you might find an idea in that little piece of writing that you just did that really sort of struck you, and then you write on that, use that as your starting point. However you can generate text. But if you have problems, if you really sort of find yourself struggling with writing, let me know. All of us have gone through periods when we've had really like serious difficulties with writing, and that's actually something that I'm interested in, something I've studied some. I myself have actually had some really difficult struggles with writing at a point in my career, and so I actually had to do some really serious investigating into how to overcome that. And one of the things I discovered is that many academics actually just have at some point have trouble writing, and the thing is we don't talk about it. No one really talks about the fact that they have trouble writing at times, and they don't talk about like, and so we all just think that we all know how to write really well, and we all just can write easily all the time, and that's not the case. So if you're struggling, know that that it's actually much more common than you might realize. And let me know, and I can point you to some resources, point you to some exercises, some things that can help. So, having said that, I want to take a look at Peter Elbow's The Collage Method. Peter Elbow is a famous and well-known and well-respected instructor of composition. He was now retired. I think he's been retired for 2 years now. His last university he taught at was the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He's written quite possibly, I would say, over 100 articles, a good dozen books on writing, academic books, and so and textbooks and things. And what we've got here is a set of like 4 instructions on how to write a collage, and it comes from his essay entitled "You're Cheating Art: A Collage," which is actually a collage essay about collage writing, and he published it in an academic journal. So it was basically sort of an explanation to other writing teachers about this kind of genre, and it's a method of generating a lot of text and sort of putting together the skeleton, if not a full draft, a skeleton of a draft, to help you get started. And so the directions that he offers in Your Cheating Art: A Collage. Do or gather as much of your writing on a topic as you can. Go fast. Don't worry. Free writing is a good idea. Take thoughts in any order that they come. So the idea here is just write, and you don't have to write write a sentence, write a word, write a paragraph, write 2 paragraphs, and once you kind of run out of one idea, jump and start another one. You don't have to worry about sort of trying to create some logical order, some logical flow. You're just actually creating snippets of ideas that all are about a topic. So once you've done that, go through what you've done and choose the best and potentially best bits. Basically kind of, and if you want, like if if you've wrote like a couple paragraphs in one and you decide that only half, one of the paragraphs is good, or you've written a paragraph and you decide that only one of the lines is good, you can just take that and get rid of the rest. So the idea is kind of generate a lot of stuff and then take kind of what's useful to you. Actually, to give you an example of this, I wrote a collage some years ago, about 5 years ago, for a class. I was writing along with them, and I actually I think I generated about 20 pages of writing in just under 2 hours this way. I had, and what I ended up doing was using about half of what I wrote. But, I got the basic text for a 10-page piece in 2 hours, which I'm a very slow writer, and so that was that's an amazing amount of writing, and only half of it was useful. But to get a 10-page paper like that, I could spend over an hour a page in other situations. So hey, I generate 20 pages, use 10 of them, do it in 2 hours, as opposed to creating 10 pages that I'm going to use and stop there. The time commitment, it's much more effective to kind of do it this way. So once, step 3, once you've kind of picked what you want to keep, revise what you have. He suggests, mostly revise by cutting, by taking things out that don't seem to work. And then try to organize, once you've got these pieces, try to organize them into an order that seems logical, or seems, depending on what your goal is, what you're trying to write. Then try to put all these little pieces into an order that makes sense. And If you were actually going to write a collage, a kind of a written collage, then you would actually have your written collage by doing this. If you're doing a more formal piece of writing, something like Project 1, this is not going to get you a full draft. It's not, but what it's going to do is it's going to actually give you this nice sort of skeletal structure. You're going to have a lot of segments, a lot of sections of your draft that you then can go in and fill in. So, in both your cheating art, a collage, and in main assignment, a collage about you as a writer and how you write, which comes from a textbook, Being a Writer, A Community of Writers Revisited, which Elbow co-authored with Pat Belanoff. Elbow presents the collage as a method, the collage method as a quick and dirty way to produce writing quickly. I include both your cheating art and the main assignment in the week 5 handout folder, so you can find them both there. And if you want to give the collage method a try, I suggest reading the main assignment handout. It's only 3 pages long. It comes from a textbook that's used for first-year composition classes. And it gives you a brief explanation, that 3-page handout gives you a brief explanation about the collage and offers 7 steps, so it gives you a few more steps. We'll take a look at them in a minute. Gives you 7 steps on how to use the method, and then even provides a short example of a collage essay, so you can see what a collage essay might look like. So here's the 7 steps that come from the main assignment. And the one thing to keep in mind is that because it's from a textbook, it's called actually, I'm giving this handout the title, Main Assignment, A Collage About You as a Writer and How You Write. Because it's from a textbook, that's actually what the assignment is about, creating a collage about yourself as a writer and how you write. So, well, we've got these 7 steps we're going to look at now. You want to keep in mind that they're geared for a student, as directions for a student who's actually doing this particular assignment. So you have to understand that you have to, that we have to kind of think about these steps, not in terms of that assignment, but in terms of assignment that you're working on now, such as Project 1. So first it says look at all the pieces you've written so far and choose a few pieces or passages. And of course, since this is a textbook, if you'd gone through the textbook, we'd done all the earlier exercises, you would have done a bunch of free writing, a bunch of sort of ways of pre-writing strategies, and so you have to have the writing. So you might need to do some free writing yourself. You might answer the questions that Booth, William, and Cullum ask in the prologue to section 4. You might take your research notes and sort of the ideas you wrote down as you were taking research. You take if you wrote some paragraphs or some sentences related to the analyzing rhetorically handout. Take all that stuff. You might then sit down and just sort of generate some more ideas about, so you decide you want to deal with ethos, you decide you want to deal with citation, you decide you want to deal with the author's stance to the reader, whatever, and so you write some stuff about that. You just, and again, if you sit down to write them, you just sort of draft whatever you've got. So that's like you have one idea and you only end up able to write 2 sentences on that idea. That's great. You move on to the next idea. If you can write 3 paragraphs on the next idea, that's great. But as soon as you find you can't write on that idea again, stop and move on to the next one. Because the idea is to just generate lots of text really quickly. And so you have all these passages. And they're not in any logical order. They're not going to be able to sort of like in the order of a straight essay. But you've got all these passages. And then you might look them over, see what you've got, see what may seem to work. Sometimes if you do this long enough, you might end up having some things that you're saying the same thing a couple different ways, and you decide that you've already covered the issue, and so you want to drop one of them out, or you want to combine them, whatever. Look them over. Then at step 2, you might decide that you want to write some more small pieces to kind of flesh out, kind of add it to what you've already got. And so you can do that. Then once you've got all these ideas, all these little pieces, I actually like to print them out and cut them like scissors, and try to put them on one, kind of get them together so they're all kind of on a single piece of paper for each different section, or multiple little small snippets on papers. Cut them all out, so I actually have these physical things that I can manipulate. Spread them out on a table, spread them out on the floor, and then go through them and arrange them in whatever order seems to be best. And that's going to obviously depend on what kind of report or essay you're writing. If it's a collage, it's more intuitive. If you're actually trying to put together, a rhetorical analysis like this, a structured argument, you are going to have an order to it. So you kind of put kind of pick the pieces and try to put them into an order that seems reasonable and logical. And then take a look at what you've got there. What's missing? What are the gaps that you now have? Try writing some stuff to fill in those gaps. And here he says you don't need an introduction or conclusion. Obviously, he's talking about, again, a collage assignment, particularly the assignment that these instructions go to. So you're going to need an introduction and a conclusion for your project. But you can draft those. And so you've kind of put things in order. Then for step 5, you've got some sort of, you've kind of filled in some of the gaps. Take a look at what you've got and revise. And again, he suggests thinking about revision here at this first stage of revision as sort of cutting, as taking things out rather than rewriting. And then copy edit it. And so what you've got here at this point, because what you have is a collage rather than an actual fully fleshed out article or essay or report, you've got essentially kind of like a frame, a structure. And then what you need to do is then go back through and add in. So like if you're familiar, if you've seen a house being built, you've got all the the frame of the house, but you still have to put the walls on, and then you've got the drywall, and then from the drywall you have to put like wallpaper or paint them or whatever, and add the carpeting and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of what the collage method. If you're actually creating an actual like a more formal piece of writing, something that's not supposed to be a collage, something like for project 1. The collage will get you to a point. And surprisingly, sometimes it can get you really close to your final, like to a full draft. Sometimes you'll have to kind of fill some stuff in. But again, if you can spend, 2-3 hours, generate 20 pages of snippets, and you find that 10 pages of those, half of those work well for you, you've got something written in 3 hours. And how often do you write a 10? Maybe you're a really fast writer and you can write a really good 10-page paper in 3 hours on a regular basis. If that's the case, that's great, and I'm really envious of you. But if you're like me, where I can spend more than an hour on a page, being able to generate that much text very quickly is really, really useful. So we move on. If this idea interests you, if you've kind of me talking here about the collage, sounds really interesting. And if you've taken a look at the main assignment, the small piece, and that seems really interesting to you, you might then want to actually take a look at your cheating art, which is, as I said, a collage essay about writing collages. Elbow published it in an academic journal. The audience was other writing teachers. And I was basically kind of explaining how to do what a written collage is, how it works, offering some theoretical and historical background and justification for using it. And so it's kind of a scholarly piece justifying and explaining what it is. But even though it's it's an academic piece, it's meant to be a scholarly piece of writing. It's really readable, and I've actually had first-year students read it in composition classes, because I often use collage in first-year classes as introduce them as a way of kind of getting writing going. So it is readable. If you find this interesting, you might want to take a look at it. And again, the handouts on the collage are in the Week 5 handouts folder. Okay, so moving on to the revising section. As Booth Coleman Williams suggests at the start of chapter 14, one of the keys to revising is to try to approach your writing as if you were one of your readers. One of the biggest mistakes writers make is to assume that their readers understand all the connections and assumptions that you've made, that are just implicit in your thinking. As a writer, these things are clear to us because we create, they are our ideas. We understand our ideas because they are our ideas. We understand the connections that have led us to the ideas we're using, because we've made those connections. Our audience, however smart and knowledgeable they are, may not have made those connections before. They just may not have thought about it before. They may not have thought about it from the perspective that we're thinking about it. They may have, they may know and have thought about idea A, B, and C, but they've never actually thought about ideas A, B, and C in conjunction with each other. And it's the actual act of thinking about A, B, and C together that makes the connection that we are relying on. And so you want to, often, especially early on as you're sort of learning to do academic writing, professional writing, you may feel like you are explaining more than you need to. Sometimes, if there are, you can actually do that. You can actually hit the point where you're explaining too much. But most of the time, actually, you're going to not. Well, it feels like you're explaining too much. You're not. You're actually providing the needed amount of information, because again, your writers aren't in your head. They're not you. I mean, your readers are not in your head. They're not you. And so you need to explain more than you need explained to you, because you're the one who understands it. So, what they cover in chapter 14 is really useful if you're getting started on revision. It's not all we could say about revision, and actually they cover revision at least in chapter 14 and chapter 17 as well, if not elsewhere in the book. And so it's not the only thing that can be said about revision, but it's useful. And one of the first things, the most important things to note about what they talk about in chapter 14 is that they divide the revision process down into multiple tasks, and they ask you to deal with one issue at a time. For instance, how the article is, how your report is framed, how you develop your argument, the organization of your report, the paragraphing in your report. They ask you to think about those things separately from each other at different times. And they even often break down each of those issues into smaller, separate issues and ask you to address each of those sub-issues one at a time. And the reason for that is, again, because the idea behind revision is that you're not editing, you're not proofreading, revision is re-seeing something. It's a revision, re-seeing of a text from a new perspective. And that new perspective is the perspective of a reader who isn't in your head and who has never read your piece before. And so, that's a difficult task to figure out how to do. It's a challenge. And so that's why Booth, Williams, and Colm actually sort of break down the revision process into a number of, they offer a revision strategy that breaks down into multiple tasks where you actually consider one single aspect at a time. And in doing so, you're more likely to approach an issue from kind of a new perspective, or at least isolate something so you can focus on it more, and focus on it in a way that you wouldn't focus on it if you were just sort of trying to read something globally and just read through and go, oh, okay, so I've just read through and it seems logical to me. Whereas it wouldn't be logical it might not be logical if it was a new reader coming to it. And I'll just note here that however well we get at sort of playing that role of the new reader, coming at our own texts as a new reader rather than as the writer. Even successful established writers at some point when they're revising often hand their drafts over to someone else, to a friend, a colleague. Most people who are successful established professional writers have a group of people they rely on to look their writing over at some point, because it is really hard to step out of our heads. So there are strategies and techniques you can learn to use. You can sort of learn to do it to a certain extent, and that's part of what chapter 14 is about. Okay, so as I said, that said, that most established professional writers actually do have other people look at their writing at some point, at some stage. The strategies of consciously working through each of the steps that are in this chapter are intended to help you sort of work towards good revision. And as they note, and this is one of my common pieces of advice, is that it's always good to let a draft sit for a while once you've written something before you try to revise it, to let it sit. And when we're really lucky, we might get to be able to set it aside for a week, or maybe even just a couple days. That's when we're really lucky. Most of the time, however, we don't have that kind of luxury. We've got a deadline coming. We have to actually revise something in a much quicker time frame. So, If you can, if you finish something at night and it's not due until the next evening or the late afternoon and you've got some time in the morning, you might actually just finish the draft, go to bed, and then revise it when you wake up. Or if you don't even have that much time, you might, finish drafting something, set it aside, go get something to eat, go have dinner, go eat a snack. Or maybe you can only, you really just need to get back on it and revise it very quickly. Take 10 minutes. Go get something to drink. Check, check Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Watch a YouTube video, just anything. Do some stretching exercises, whatever. The idea is to actually physically and mentally do something that is not related to your writing, to that actual project. Because what that does is have it kind of creating that sort of physical and mental break, even if it's just for 10 minutes, helps you sort of shift from the writerly perspective to the readerly one when you go to revise. Okay, so that is the end of this lecture. If you have questions, again, we have the discussion forum in Blackboard for Ask General Questions. Please post them, and thank you.